I guess for one of more official way of starting it, I want to welcome you all to the 50th birthday Geov Parrish roast and Eat the State fundraiser. You know, it's great. It's a great crowd. I'm looking around. I see, you know, we've got at least one elected official. I saw Nick somewhere. Yeah, there we go. Nick's back there. It looks like we have some of our city's most passionate activists, a couple of our most prominent journalists, and looking around the room, I think this is about everybody in Seattle who voted for David Bloom. So it's a good crowd. Of course, this is not just a celebration of Geov, it's also a fundraiser for Eat the State. Eat the State, it's their 14th year. It's an all-volunteer organization. It's something we don't have a lot of left these days, which is an independent and free press. And, but it's not entirely free because it costs them about $2,000 a month to print the publication. So I urge...
No, Valaham's dry cleaning bill.
We should have a mic at everybody's table. And so I urge you all to give generously. There will be a basket handed around evening goes on.
Can I throw in another quick plug?
Okay.
I'm actually involved in a number of other groups as well, and there's some literature from them in the back table over here on people's left. And one of them, which is my day job, as a lot of folks know, is Peace Action of Washington. And so for that, $5 or whatever you want to donate, it's a very embarrassing CD of essentially outtakes from one of my old bands. And one of those songs was actually heard in the mixtape that you were listening to earlier, and I'm not going to tell you which one. So.
Okay, so this is, of course, a roast. So folks should feel free to be as cruel as they want. And to the my fellow presenters, we'll give you your choice. You can either present up at this lovely podium or avoid moving around the chairs and present from where you're sitting. And before I get to the other presenters, I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about my good friend Geov. I am, of course, David Goldstein. I blog at horsesass.org. where Geov has had posting privileges for a number of years now. I emphasize the difference
between... Which I've used at least twice.
That's right. There's a difference between having posting privileges and actually posting, I've learned. And I don't want to get too mushy, Geov, and I don't know if you know this, but you're actually one of the people that inspired me to write about politics. I don't think I ever told you that before. You see, I met Geov way back when he was a columnist for the Seattle Weekly, you know, before it folded. And like most media consumers, I was a bit naive about the way the industry worked. And I just kind of assumed that to get to the point where you are a columnist at a newspaper, and for people to kind of somewhat take you seriously, you had to be someone who was kind of special as a writer, as a thinker, and then I met Geov. And I had the same reaction when I met Skip and most of the other journalists in Seattle, and I figured these guys are writing about politics, why not me? And so my career as a blogger was born, and Geov, I owe you a lot of the blame.
And many people have now had this similar reaction when they meet you.
That's right. Now, you know, Geov has this reputation. I guess a lot of folks probably think of him as a bit of a knee-jerk liberal. But once you get to know him, in fact, his politics are much more nuanced and eclectic, that might be the right word, than you might first imagine. For example, and this is a good one, when it comes to the issue of national health care reform, Geov very selflessly I think it's fair to say you would support a government-controlled single-payer system would be your preference?
That's absolutely correct.
Right, and I think some critics would actually say that that borders on socialism, which, there you go, with that idea of him as this sandaled, granola-eating, knee-jerk Seattle hippie liberal. But at the same time, there is this, kind of classically anti-government libertarian streak in Geov, and I think that's most pronounced with his opposition to mandatory motorcycle helmet laws. Now, on the one hand, Geov supports this big, expensive government takeover of healthcare, about as intrusive as you can get. On the other hand, he is a passionate defender of the rights of motorcyclists, who Geov lovingly refers to as spare parts. He defends their right to hurdle at upwards of 100 miles an hour without any protective headgear whatsoever, as long as their internal organs remain intact. And that is a basic freedom. That is, in fact, the basic freedom that brings us all here together tonight to celebrate the unlikely occurrence of Geov's 50th birthday.
Also, the freedom to be stupid as long as you don't damage your internal organs. That's a basic freedom, too.
Your internal organs.
Yes.
Right. So happy birthday, Geov. And I got to say, watching you shuffle in here tonight like you were doing a Tim Conway impersonation. That dates me, doesn't it? No Carol Burnett fans? Okay. I got to say...
You kind of look like Tim Conway.
I got to say, Geov, that you don't look a day over 65, maybe 68 tops, but that's really not what's important. Because
no, my pancreas is 32.
That's right. Important. Oh, fine. Steal my punchlines. Because what matters, of course, is not how old you look on the outside, but how young you feel on the inside, and your pancreas, and, you know, depending on your internal organ, you're younger than most of us in the room. The baby I saw earlier should watch out. Which, of course, brings me back to the main subject of my comments tonight, which is, of course, our national healthcare crisis. At the same time I was writing these remarks, I was also doing some research on a post I'm writing, and I came across some startling statistics that actually, I had this epiphany, and that is, in 2009, we as a nation are going to spend about almost $2.5 trillion on healthcare. That is about twice the average per capita that's spent in other industrialized nations.
That's because I don't live in those other industrialized nations.
Somebody turn off his mic. And you have to put this in perspective. In 1990, we were spending about 12% of GDP on healthcare, and in 2009, we'll be spending almost 17%. And the difference, I learned, between 1990 and 2009 is that 1990 was around the time where Geov got sick. Now, I don't mean to blame our entire healthcare crisis on Geov, but even if you assume that only about half of that increase in the percentage of GDP is due to Geov, that is about $400 billion a year just to keep Geov alive. Now put that number in perspective. You dirty hippies. I want you to put that number in perspective. $400 billion is a little less than what we have spent so far on the TARP bailout, on bailing out the banking system, and that's what we spend in 1 year to keep Geov alive. $400 billion.
Priceless.
No, actually, you can put a price on it, unfortunately, and we all heard that statistic that about 40% of Medicare dollars are spent in the final month of life. Well, the problem is that Job's final month of life has lasted for about 2,672 days.
You're short by about 3,000 days.
I mean, understand that Geov he visits the emergency room more frequently than most Republicans take a dump. That Geov...
Twice a year?
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, I can't even afford to get my teeth cleaned. And yet Geov has consumed more human livers than Hannibal Lecter. Which reminds me, I have a gift, my own gift for you, Geov. We got some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Oh, wait. Geov, you can't drink, can you?
I don't drink, no.
No, okay. So this is for us.
Go for it.
Okay. Okay, so I think I've had my personal fill on Geov tonight, except to make one last and final point, Geov, and that is, as involved as you are in politics, you do know that last year, the voters of this state, in their wisdom, approved a Death with Dignity initiative by a better than 58% margin.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Get the hint. Okay, on to our other speakers tonight. Lance Scott is one of the founders of Eat the State with Geov, right?
Yep.
Wow. 14 years ago. Back when you actually looked 50. He does, well, I'll read what it says. He does lay out occasional writing for me. I don't know. I've never met him before, but Lance, your words up here at the podium or in your seat?
If we would get away from this light
Okay.
in my eyes, that would be great.
Well, then,
So,
do the very...
So did they find somewhere for you to sit, David?
Well,
we're working on it.
The restroom is right around the corner.
Whoops, oh, that's not the right way.
as a Democrat, I might have to use it.
There we go. Sorry, I'm not used to public speaking much, but so I don't know if you all know this, but according to Geov, is this ringing or something?
That other microphone is pointed at the loudspeaker.
Oh, there you go. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you all know this, but according to Geov, he has only had 2 other birthday parties in his entire 50 years of life. So one was when he was a kid. I don't know much about that one. And then the other one, the second one, is what I want to talk about here tonight. It was in 1993. Geov and I were housemates. We were living in, I don't know, kind of an anarchist, hippie, pagan commune in the Montlake neighborhood, near the Montlake Bridge. And you know, at that time, as you've heard reference to, and probably most people know, Geov was having some health difficulties. His kidneys were failing. He was on kidney dialysis at the time, and he was on a waiting list to get a kidney transplant. And so, you know, the housemate, we felt kind of bad for him. He was going through a rough time in his life, and especially when we heard it was his birthday and that he'd only had one birthday party up to that point. We were like, hey, let's throw him a birthday party. You know, let's make it a really special time. And
it was.
And it was, yeah. It turned out very special. So, you know, people did what they could to make it really nice. And I personally, I had to show up a little bit late to the event because I had an important prior engagement that night. But so I got there about an hour after it was supposed to start, and as soon as I got there, I could tell that something was not quite right. For one thing, nobody was really there, except for my housemates. And they were all looking kind of glum, and Geov wasn't there at all. And I was like, what's going on? I thought we were having this birthday party for Geov here. And my housemates explained to me right around the beginning of the party, Geov had had a seizure. They had to call 911. He was picked up by an ambulance and taken to the emergency room. Why are people laughing? That's not funny. Anyway, so of course, you know, I thought to myself, what a selfish, ungrateful bastard. I mean, here we had gone to all this trouble to put on a nice party for him, and then he just flakes out like that, you know.
I tried to wait for you, but other people had to leave.
And so, you know, like I said, people had worked really hard to make this a special party. And not to toot my own horn too much, but I just want to talk about, you know, some of the personal sacrifices I had made for him that night. Because I left an hour early from the bar where I was watching the Sonics game, just to be there with my special friend Geov. And I know I said I had a special, yeah, I had
You
very...
can see the Sonics play any, oh, never mind.
So, yeah, I said it was a special, you know, an important prior commitment. And what you have to remember is in 1993, the Sonics were actually good. We had Gary Payton, we had Detlef Schrempf, we had Sean Kemp. You know, we were coming up. They hadn't achieved greatness yet, but you could tell it was going to happen. So I think you can understand why, you know, watching the Sonics game took precedence over this birthday party. But anyway, my point is that I actually left the bar before the game was even over, because I wanted to be there with my dear friend Geov. I mean, the Sonics, it wasn't a good night. They were behind by 20 points in the fourth quarter, so I thought, what the hell, I may as well go back. But anyway, on my way, and by the way, Goldie, this was at the Montlake pub. I think you know the place that I'm talking about. But before I went back to the party, I wanted to go to the...
That's 2 blocks away from where we lived.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted to be, you know, available. So anyway, before I went back to the party, I went down to the mini mart so I could pick up a 6-pack of beer and a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. I was a big fan of Ben & Jerry's at the time, as you'll remember, Geov. And lo and behold, there was a rack with birthday cards for 50% off. So I was like, this is great. I'm going to get Geov a card. And I mean, it wasn't a great card, you know, for 50% off, what can you expect? But what do they say? It's the thought that counts, right? So my thought at that point was, here, Geov.
50% off?
Yeah, 50% off. Come on,
that was your thought.
So my thought at that point was, well, I mean, Geov had only had one birthday party up to that point. So here we were throwing him a birthday party, and I was bringing him a card. I mean, that was a serious upgrade, right?
You also got dog food because it was 50% off, and we didn't have a dog.
We can't turn off his mic? Look, you're cutting into my time, okay? Just smile and nod, all right?
Careful he doesn't go into convulsions.
Now you made me lose my place. Birthday card, 50%. Oh, I'm on the back.
It was right after the Sonics were losing.
I'm on the back page already. So anyway, and not to brag, but I even managed to sign the card before I left the store. Wow. So at that point, I was feeling pretty good about myself, and I started walking back home with the beer and the ice cream and the birthday card. And, well, of course, Geov doesn't drink, so, and at that point, he couldn't eat sugar, so, but I was bringing him the card, you know, the rest of the stuff was for me. But And so I showed up at the house, and as I mentioned, you know, Jobs' histrionics had kind of destroyed the whole evening for everybody. And, well, I mean, the evening wasn't totally ruined. I still had the beer and the ice cream, anyway, moving right along, I remember I wasn't able to get to the hospital the next day. I forget what, maybe there was another game on or something, but the day after that, I did make it to the hospital, and I saw that some very thoughtful person had brought, you know, the cards and the presents from the party to Jobs' hospital room. And I thought, well, that's really nice. What was not so nice was that Job hadn't even opened any of it yet. I mean, granted, he was still in a coma, but at this point, I was getting kind of tired of his whole attitude about this birthday thing. So, you know, I wasn't going to stick around and hang out with this guy in a coma, so but just as I was turning to leave, I saw, well, there was the birthday card that I had gotten for him. And I figured he wasn't going to know the difference, so I took it back. And luckily for me, I was actually able to return it to the mini-mart and get my money back. So, you know, I just wanted to leave.
Did you return the beer?
No. But I just wanted to leave on a positive note like that for y'all. Well, I guess, I mean, there was one other positive thing, I guess you could say, that came out of it. I mean, Job did come out of the coma. He did come back from the hospital. That was good. Although he kind of pulled the same stunt a couple weeks later, right around Thanksgiving. And at that point, he went into a more prolonged and serious and life-threatening coma. But he survived that, and he eventually got his kidney transplant. And now here we are 16 years later, I think long after the warranty expired on that kidney transplant. And Job is still here for our roasting pleasure. So, so I guess you could say that was another, you know, positive outcome of the story. But at the time, I was pretty psyched to get my money back for the card because I could get more beer. But Job, I just, you know, for all the years that we've lived together, we've worked together, you know, I love you like a brother. I've never had a brother, so I don't know exactly what that means. But I just want to say, I want to take this opportunity to say publicly, you know, in front of all these people, thank you. Thank you for not ruining this party like you did the last time.
We have a ways to go yet.
Oh, man, that was just so touching. Okay, on that note, give money. There you go, there's another plug. When are we doing the basket thing? At some point, we'll do a little later in the program. No, the basket full of, it's a church. We're supposed to hand out a basket. See, I'm Jewish, I don't understand that. We just anonymously pledge or something, so it's very different. Okay, our next speaker, roaster, is Brita Butler-Wall. She is a former school board president, and as a father of a child who went through the whole school closure process, I could have a whole roast on the school board, but I don't think you were part of that one. That last one, the second, oh, okay. But Brita, would you like to come up here or do it from the seat? Okay.
I suppose this is working. Can you hear me? Great. I think it's my age. I'm closer to my script here than I would be up there. I realized that I met Geov 13 years ago, and here we are on the 13th, so very fitting. How I met Geov. He was a guy on a chair. December 3rd, 1996, we were holding a forum at Mount Zion church in Seattle.
This is already worrying me.
Yes, yes, trying to get rid of advertising in schools. And we had Alex Molnar from the University of Wisconsin versus the school board at the time. Of course, I wasn't on it. And Joseph Olszewski, the former superintendent. There you go. We had 146 people in the audience. Everyone seemed to be opposed to advertising in schools. And I was very happy that this event had gone very well. And all of a sudden, in the back, there's a guy sitting on, not on the seat of the chair, but somehow sitting on the back of the chair, wearing a baseball cap backward on his head, and not taking his turn and holding up his hand to ask his question, but just shouting out at all of us, "We have to organize." And I thought, oh my gosh, who is this guy? I was just trying to make this thing happen, and here he is screaming at me from the back. And I learned 3 valuable things about Geov right then and there. 1, he doesn't conform. 2, he can get attention. And 3, he's right. So shortly thereafter was born the Citizens Campaign for Commercial-Free Schools, which lasted for half a dozen years or more. And Geov was sort of our trusted advisor, sometimes our secret advisor, since he was a neutral member of the media establishment. He did do a nice, we had the first and only statewide conference on commercialism in schools, and he did a workshop for us on media techniques with Sarah Luthens, which was terrific. I know I heard him another time at the Forum on Globalization at the University of Washington with a bunch of other people who are probably in the room. And that was when he was still a columnist at Seattle Weekly. And I have to say that Eat the State and also the radio show are kind of what have kept Dave Wall and myself going during the darkest political hours. No, yeah, good old Eat the State. So what you might not know about me, other than that I closed some schools, is that, my training is as a linguist. So, of course, I started thinking about Geov's name. I couldn't really do much with Geov, but in terms of Parrish, I had some possibilities here. So I started thinking about, why did his parents name him Geov Parrish? Well, Parrish, that made me think of church, and it made me think of spiritual things and community building. And I thought, well, that's a nice connection with Geov Parrish. But I thought, no, that's too simple. Then I thought of parish as in pares things down, gets to the gist of it, cuts to the quick, incisive parish. So I think you're very parish in that sense. Then in my fevered brain, I started thinking about the kind of the duopoly, and I thought about a pair of political parties, a pair of candidates. I thought of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. I thought of all these things. I thought
I'm schizophrenic.
Schizophrenic. Well, no, not at all. I thought of Geov's scornful, heated criticisms of the corporate duopoly. And I decided it was something like leaving a pair of them in ash. Parash. Okay, never mind. And I also, of course, thought of parish, like. But of course, that doesn't apply to Geov. He's still going strong at 50. Yay, woo! And very exciting, Eat the State is bigger and better and more frequent than ever. So this is a tremendous legacy for progressives, not just in Seattle, but anywhere. I mean, out there on the cyberspace and airwaves and everywhere. So anti-authoritarians can be very happy that this is not about Parrish. But finally, it came to me, the origin of your name. Parrish. I decided Geov may not be as thin-skinned as a pear because he's had all those years of fighting his battles, but Geov, I say, is definitely sweet and is as beautiful on the inside as the outside. So thank you, Geov.
Thank you. There's a certain shape resemblance, too.
No. this kind of pear. So my experience of Geov before and after and during my stint on the school board is that he's very compassionate. However, he doesn't pull punches, and he will even go after third parties, as I have felt a couple times, being from the Green Party. And just fundamentally, Geov always seems to be of the people and for the people, and especially kids. And I just want you to know that all those years, by shining his light, his incisive light on these issues, he helped us get ads out of the schools. He helped us get military marketing at least greatly curtailed in the schools. He helped us get junk food out of the schools, and he helped us get the Coca-Cola Corporation out of the schools. So I say a toast.
Pretty good for a Pepsi addict.
Good for Pepsi.
I'm not in school.
Not at school. And he's not, a child anymore. So, a toast.
Careful.
Careful. A toast to my dear friend Geov, whatever we may call you.
Thank you, Brita. There we go, a little. Okay, so our next presenter to my right is Skip Berger, who, as you all may know, was the former editor of the Seattle Weekly before it folded, where I guess he attempted to edit Geov. Good luck there. And after that, he had a stint at what's it called, Crosscut, before it folded. And now he's best known for his activism in defending some of Seattle's great historical landmarks, ugly old buildings, freeways, Republicans, things that remind us of our past in this city. Skip, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Goldie. Geov, it's awkward to talk here without being able to see you, but then we never saw you at the weekly offices either. I've attended a couple fundraisers for Geov, and it's weird because I'm non-Christian, so I'm sensitive to these things. They're both in churches. Yeah. And one thing you didn't mention, Brita, in the wordplay was parish, as in church parish. But I think the real reason that Geov likes to do this is because churches have organs. Right? Where's the snare drum?
That's why I keep going to different ones. They tend to disappear from the churches. When I heard that there were going to be 7 people up here on the dais, I was thinking, I was kind of counting organs, like, is that how many Geov needs? Is there a donation? One of the reasons I hired Geov is that he's one of the few people in Seattle who has a name as unpronounceable as mine. Although people, they say, I pronounce it Knute, they say Knute. With Geov, I was always getting angry phone calls, but they never knew who to ask for. It was always Geov or Geoff. Yeah, they just, and I think you guys are the only people that actually know how to pronounce Geov's name. Geov and I share a contrarian attitude, if not exactly our politics. Of course, few human beings share Geov's politics. If you look at what the readers of Seattle Weekly said in the letters page, John is an anarcho-communist, eco-terrorist, car-loving, pro-smoking, peacenik, fascist, sexist, homo-loving man-hater. Geov's politics make about as much sense as Glenn Beck's blackboard. They're like the love child of Ron Paul and Amy Goodman. And just a note for Glenn Beck, in case he hears about this, Geov was an anarcho-communist, eco-terrorist, car-loving, pro-smoking, peacenik, fascist, sexist, homo-loving man-hater before Obama.
Geov wrote his politics column for The Weekly for many years, and I always loved the way Geov was able to calm trouble down. He was the only anarchist I know who was so enraged at the Eugene anarchists for their behavior at WTO that he threatened to spit in anarchist philosopher John Zerzan's face. As Geov knows, spitting in a man's face is the way to tone down violence. Geov also knew how to calm the waters when he defended the Makah tribe's whale hunt. In writing about it, he called the Sea Shepherd's eco-activist Captain Paul Watson a racist and a moron. I received a letter and call from Mr. Watson threatening legal action against The Weekly, namely a libel suit, unless Geov and the paper retracted the slander. However, Geov reminded us and Mr. Watson that to be liable, the allegation of racist moron must be false. And therefore, Mr. Watson could shove it. I'm hoping that a small percentage of tonight's donations can go to reimburse The Weekly for its past legal bills. If you Google Geov Parrish on the internet, you will find statements, and these are actually direct quotes. Geov Parrish endorses vote fraud.
That was from Stephen Sharkowski, by the way.
Yes, Sound Politics. Geov Parrish is a left-wing media whore. Geov Parrish is a classic example of the man-hating media. Geov Parrish is skewing statistics or just making them up to support a weak argument. And you thought the internet was just filled with lies. Geov, I'd just like to say congratulations on making the half-century mark, and kudos to you for what you do so well, which is make trouble.
Yeah. Thank you, Skip.
Okay, so moving right along from one newspaper man to another, our next presenter is Tim Harris, who is the director of Real Change. And before you go, Tim, I just want to give you credit because I don't think people realize how important Real Change has been over the past couple of years in terms of keeping journalism alive in this city. In fact, it's through Real Change that most of our journalists actually have been able to stay in the industry. Just last week, I think I bought a copy from David Postman. Tim?
Thinking this guy looked like one of our vendors. So, I know Geov, because there's only about 4 of us that run the alternative media establishment in this city. And
we really work hard to keep everybody else out.
Well, yeah, you know, we get together. It's like every 3rd Tuesday. We get together. We decide what you're all supposed to be thinking and come up with solutions to the Mideast conflict and figure out how we're going to abolish capitalism and crap like that. Sometimes we get together and we watch, like, FOIA'd police videotapes of the WTO demonstrations. Listen to... Usually Geov does this in rapt silence. We listen to speeches by Cindy Sheehan. Geov whips up...
I don't snore?
He whips up a big pot of chamomile tea, makes a special organic popcorn. He's like, he only uses the best tamari. It's amazing. There used to be a lot more of us. There used to be about twice as many of us that were running the alternative media in this town, but there was like this disagreement, and we held a lefty firing squad and stood in a circle and kind of thinned things out a little bit. So Real Change and Eat the State started at right about the same time. And, you know, we used to feel pretty threatened by them. We had like 7 advertisers, and they had 3. And, you know, this, of course, immediately gave them the moral high ground. we figured that was about 30% of market share. So, we tried doing this like leveraged buyout. And, we thought we'd just kind of milk them until the $237 in their bank account ran out and send their writers off to re-education camps, but didn't work out.
Isn't collusion so much more fun?
Well, the thing is, the paper was so fucking underground that we couldn't find it. Back in those days, they were printing the thing on the back of napkins that they stole from Dick's. And they were like communicating through graffiti in the men's room at the Comet.
You know why that fell through? We had too many vegans working with us, and they wouldn't go into Dick's. It was a real problem.
So, we gave up on that idea. But, eventually we became friends. And, now that we're friends, I thought I'd offer a little bit of business advice. I was thinking about real change and Eat the State and, how we print about, 18,000 copies a week, and their print run is still limited to the supply of napkins from Dick's. And I asked myself, what's the difference between these two papers? Barring, of course, the exploitation of the desperately poor as a captive labor force. What would, what could they do? What kind of advice could I give that would help them most? And I decided that, the real problem here was the name, Eat the State. And I thought, they're just like totally pulling their punches here. Even with the exclamation point, it's just so tame. You need to rename the thing. So came up with a couple of ideas. Eat shit, capitalist pig dog.
It's too big for a T-shirt.
People would be horrified.
That another one that might work is dumbass liberals must die.
I like it.
It's kind of to the
It's
point.
better.
So, speaking of death, this guy's dying. At least he says he is. And he's supposed to be dead now. He apparently hasn't been cooperating. And, it's a pretty big club, those of us who are dying. But, this guy has lived with a terminal disease for like 21 years. And that's it's an oxymoron is what that is. It's like, what part of terminal do you not understand? I was thinking about this, and it's like the ultimate anti-authoritarian gesture. It's like, fuck you, death! The best part is he's getting away with it. He's got this whole sort of atheist down with the people thing going on, but he's got friends in high places. So, I don't know what the hell he's got. I'm not up on the details about it, but I got a theory because I've listened to his radio show. And I think that, like myself, Geov suffers from white male disease. You can, ask him any question whatsoever, and he knows the answer. And if he doesn't, he just makes it up. It's great. I was listening to his show on the radio a while ago, and it was like, so Mr. Parrish, tell us about the mayor's homeless sweeps and what's going on there and why it's a problem. Well, homeless people lived in complete peace in the green belts, composting their garbage and conducting voluntary neighborhood watch vigils until very recently. And we discovered that Mayor Nichols has flown in several death squads from Guatemala. And they're executing the homeless and leaving them in anonymous mass graves throughout the Queen Anne area. Queen Anne residents.
Real change.
Get to that. Queen Anne residents have been complaining about the smell and have requested that the mayor instead ship the bodies off to pig farms in Poolsbo. And I'm like, yeah, finally somebody dares to talk about the pig farms. And I'm just like, I'm totally there with them, you know? And I think that sometimes the broader theme matters more than the strict truth. So, you know, I get it. So, you know.
There's a lot of truth in fiction.
Absolutely. Fiction. So, you know, here we are. There he is. He is a fighter. He's a truth teller. He's beating the odds. Keep beating the odds, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I think it's time to make another money pitch, right? Okay, so I heard about this. Can somebody like wave the basket, show me? Is there an actual physical basket? Were you tricking me? You wanted to make me look foolish here. There it is. There's the basket. Oh, there's another basket. More baskets. Oh my gosh. Now remember how this works. You're supposed to put money in, not take money. I mean, we're all needy here, especially bloggers like me, but it's put money in. So again, Eat the State, 14 years. Is, I don't know, what's more surprising, your survival or Eat the State's?
And so far, we've pretty much only covered the hall and the food, and so we really could use some more.
Yeah, more money.
More money. That's the best way to honor Geov is with money, because that's what he stood for his whole life. Okay, moving right along. Maria Tomchick is also an ETS writer. Did I say that? Did I just say ETS, or I have to like punch the exclamation point? ETS. ETS. Okay. It's also an ETS writer, a contributor, and also does radio at KEXP. Eat the waves.
Eat the airwaves.
Eat the airwaves. That's airwaves. Eat the. I should read this thing. Eat the. Airwaves. Okay, we'll underline that. This is just the dress rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maria.
Okay. So anyway, oh yeah, I gotta adjust the microphone down.
Stand up.
Gotta stand on tippy toe here.
Finally, you get to say something.
Don't hold back.
I feel like that some mornings, some Saturday mornings, it's like, is somebody going to turn his microphone on? No, I met Geov about 6 months after Eat the State started in early 97. I think it started in 96, and then I came on in early in 97. And I found a copy of Eat the State at the local co-op, slipped it in my bag and carried it home with me. And I read it later, and I remember reading it going, who is this asshole? I can do this. I can write like this. So I went to a meeting. And I went into the room, and there were all these people in there. It was actually up on the 3rd floor of this building when Eat the State shared offices with the NAC, Nonviolent Action Community of Cascadia, up on the 3rd floor here. And it was a lot of college-age students, and I think maybe even a couple high school students, and a lot of activists up there, you know, folding paper and stuffing, you know, pages into other pages, and, you know, sticking stamps on there and sticking labels on there, and talking. And you know, in those days, nobody signed any of the articles that were in Eat the State. It was just all text, and you didn't know who wrote it or anything. And I walked in and I said, hi, I'm here to volunteer for Eat the State. And they said, great, we'll make room for you. And, you know, they got me a folding chair and everything. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, so who writes all this stuff? And Geov, who was sitting at the computer, turns around, you know, and here's the ring in the nose and the long hair. He had long, long hair in those days. And he turned around and he goes, I'm trying to get other people to do it, but mostly it's just me, you know. And I said, oh, okay. I used to write and edit for Subtext, and I'd like to write for Eat the State. And he said, great, write me something and send it to me by email, and then we'll get together and we'll go over it. And I'm like, great. So, you know, so we set this date, and I went home, and I'm like, okay, so I wrote up this little article. And now I had a lot of experience in college. I got an English degree, and I had a lot of experience doing expository writing, where the main idea is to keep it brief and to the point, and to always make your argument and have your facts and hit all the points and everything and come up with a good conclusion. So I sent him this article. It's about 600 words long. And so I go into the office with him, and he pulls up the article I emailed him, and he goes, okay, let's look at this article. And he reads it, and he goes, well, this is okay. What can we add? And I'm like, add? And he goes, yeah, what can we add? Like right here. And so he puts the cursor there, and he just starts typing. He starts typing away, and the sentence goes from being a nice, short, pithy, to the point sentence to being the whole paragraph. And I'm like, isn't that a run-on sentence? You know, wait, maybe that's a little long. And he's like, what? Oh, we can add something down here. And so he goes down and he adds some more to another page. So my little 600-word article became like 1,000 words. And I'm just kind of sitting there thinking, okay, wait, just, you know, you've never written editorials before. Just beginner's mind, okay? Beginner's mind, you know? So I just sat there and I kind of like watched, you know, and I didn't even really get a chance to read it all before he said, oh, this is pretty good. Let's add something really funny at the end to kind of wrap it all up. So he adds more at the end, and he goes, great, now I got enough words. Does a word check, word count, and he goes, okay, now I got enough words. Send it to Lance, I'm all done. Dang, that's great to have that issue all done. Like, okay, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I didn't even really get to read it, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, at least it doesn't have my name on it, because nobody's name is on any of these. So I go home, the final version comes out, I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, that's not half bad, that's pretty good, that's pretty good. You know, my little 600-word article that was very emotionless and just the facts was a good structure, and Geov came in, the Geov School of Editorial Writing is you got to put more. So more is better. And in particular, more of yourself. So, you know, there's got to be some heat there, you know, some emotion, or else nobody wants to read it. So, so that was my attending the Geov School of Editorial Writing. And it didn't take me very long for my 600-word articles to become 800 words, and then 1,000 words, and then 1,200 words, and then around 1,800 words, and I'm sorry,
the book comes out in January, right?
About 2,200 words, you know. So now I sit down to write an article, and I'm writing away, and then I'm going, dang, that paragraph is one long sentence. Less is more. Less is more. I gotta like make it make sense. Yeah. So now I'm kind of doing the reverse, but anyway, that was my experience learning how to write editorials with Geov. One of the things I also learned from Geov is how to write really fast. And it was great when I started editing. You have this set number of words you have to fill. And I would look at, you know, all the articles people had emailed in, and I'd go, okay, I got 2 good articles, I need 2 more, I can write one myself. And I'd sit down and I'd write one, and then I'd call up Geov and I'd say, Geov, can you write me an article, you know? And we'd talk about what it would be on, and he'd say, okay, how many words do you need? And I'd say, oh, about 900 to 1,000 words. And he says, okay, I'll call you back. So then about 45 minutes later, he'd call me and say, okay, I emailed you something. I would have got it to you sooner, but I got interrupted with a phone call. And he goes, and it's not 900 to 1,000 words, it's about 1,500 words. And I tried to cut it down, but I couldn't, you know, I cut as much as I could out of there. And I just left the rest for you to cut because you're good at that. So that was kind of, you know, that was fun. I'd get the article and I'd go through, and I was good at cutting it out, and I could make it fit. So that was kind of fun. But I learned from Geov that, and I'd be sitting there going, he wrote all this in probably about a half an hour, you know? So that taught me something, too, that you don't necessarily have to agonize over everything you write, too. This,
or even think about it, really.
Or even think about it much, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I especially noticed that when we would go to table at events as Eat the State. And we'd be sitting there, and people would come up to us, and they'd always say, you know, because we were putting out the newspaper about every week, they'd come up and they'd say, "Are you Geov? Are you Maria? I read an article you wrote about 2-3 weeks ago." And we'd kind of, you know, our eyes would glaze over and go, "Oh, which article?" You know, and they go, "Oh, you know, an article about Afghanistan." And then we kind of look at each other. We go, "Okay, yeah, which of the 20 articles about Afghanistan?"
Narrow it down.
Yeah, and then I'd look over at Geov, and Geov would he'd just start talking, you know, and I'm like, he's just making shit up, you know. And the person would just be like, "Yeah, he's doing," you know, it was the Geov magic. He's making shit up in front of me. It's great, you know. So I kind of realized that, okay, all you have to do is you have to, you know, be well read on the topic, and then when you're called upon, you just make shit up, you know. That's kind of the key to editorial writing. And then you can go back and, you know, throw a few facts in here and there, but the key is to just kind of get the ball rolling. Anyway, so one of the stories I want to tell is about, like Lance, I've had experience with Geov when he hasn't been feeling so well. Shortly after I started the newspaper, and we went right about the same time we went to newsprint, and we pretty much doubled in size. So we had to come up with about twice as much content as we had with the zine version of Eat the State. Geov had his stroke, and he went into the hospital. And so I was doing this every week, where I had to, you know, do about double the editorial work, and I was in a panic because I was worried that this was the end, you know. And so as soon as Geov went into the hospital, I had to visit him. I had to see how bad was this, you know. And I came in to see Geov, and, you know, he was completely out of it. He was like this, you know, completely, you know, he was in a coma and everything. And I was really worried about him. And I was visiting him every day, and I'm sure the other folks who came to visit him were like, "Wow, Maria, she's so dedicated. She's so worried about Geov." What they didn't know was that I was thinking, "Don't you fucking die on me, because I'd be stuck with this paper and doing this, you know, get better Geov to help me out, you know." So, you know, and at that time, people were calling me up too to ask me how he was. Mark Worth, I don't know if many of you folks remember who Mark Worth was. He started the Washington Free Press. He called me up, and he said, "Geov's in the hospital, how's he doing?" And I said, "Well, you know, you can come and visit him. I'm going to go visit him, you know, tonight. Come and visit him with me." He's like, "No, I really, you know, hospitals really freak me out. You know, I don't like to go to the hospital." So
That sounds like Mark.
Yeah, I persuaded him. I said, "Come on, you know, you got to come and see him and help him get better. You know, everybody else is visiting him." And so I talked him into it. So we go to the hospital, and I'm expecting to see Geov like this, you know, completely out of it, like he's been the last 3 times I went to visit him. And we get there, and I walk into the room, and Geov's sitting on the edge of the bed, and he's eating with one hand, you know, because he had the stroke, and the left side of his body wasn't working so well, but he was eating with his right hand. And the right foot was going like it does, you know, Geov's right foot likes to kind of do this little kicking thing. And he was cracking jokes, and he was smiling and laughing, and I was just like, he's awake. He's awake, and the brain is working. Yay, the brain is working, you know. And then I turn around and look at Mark, and Mark is like this. He was just like horrified, you know, and I could just tell what he was thinking. He was thinking, "Shit, man, I should have gotten high before I came here. This is like a hospital, and he's like hooked up to like machines and shit, you know." I just like, you know, but I was so happy. And one of the first things we did right after Geov woke up was we tried to get a keyboard in front of him and a monitor, and to get him writing, because, you know, I needed content. But it was physical therapy for him too, because he needed to get that left hand working and to get the brain working and to get all of that wiring all straightened out again after the stroke was a really good thing. But it was also a really good thing to get more content too. So
most of it worked.
Right. And so one of the things about Geov that I've really come to admire and respect is that, unlike most men, Geov can really talk about his own body and his health problems. And I empathize with that because I've had a few of my own health problems. And one of the things that we like to do when we get together is we like to, he knows what's coming. He knows what's coming. We like to talk about bodily fluids. So a typical conversation after we've done the radio show and we've kind of wandered out of the booth into the hallway outside kind of to talk about our weeks is I'll turn to Geov. I'll say, "How you doing, Geov?" And he'll say something like, "Oh, I spent the whole week in the bathroom." And then I'll say, "Oh, was it coming out the top or coming out the bottom?" And then I'll notice about that time Mike will turn around and walk back into the booth. And I always think, oh, he's got stuff to do in there, you know. But no, he's just avoiding hearing the conversation about the bodily fluids. And then Geov will ask me, "How were you this week?" And I'll say, "Oh, you know, I'm getting over that cold. I'm kind of to the part where it's gone from drippy snot to the endless bungee cord of snot." And Mike will come back and he goes, "You guys are still talking about bodily fluids? What's the matter with you, you know?" But yeah, and there's always one thing I can count on from Geov is about, somewhere around 3 to 4 minutes before we go on the air. Every time, he knows what I'm going to say. Every time, about 3 or 4 minutes before we go on the air, the foot will start going, and he'll fold his hands and he'll look up and he'll say, "I'm starting to envision a rushing waterfall, a gurgling stream. I'm imagining a big pool of water seeking the lowest spot." And then I'll go, "Oh, God, you had to do that again. I do not have to go to the bathroom, Geov. Shut up." And then Mike will turn around. Mike's fussing at the board. He'll turn around, he'll look at me, and he'll go, "Aren't you going to go take a safety pee? What's the matter with you? There's only 3 minutes left." And I'll be, "Oh, God." And then I'll be, no, I don't have to. And then Geov will go, "I'm seeing a river, a huge river rushing towards the ocean." I'll go, "God, all right." And then I run down the hallway, and that's, you know. So every Saturday morning, you know, when next time you guys turn on the radio, you can imagine Maria just running back from the bathroom.
For our next fundraiser, we're going to sell DVDs of the conversations that actually happen before and after.
Because that's when some of our best stuff is.
It's much more entertaining, and it's not nearly as FCC friendly.
Yeah, that's when when we say some of our best stuff. But anyway, I just want to say, Geov, as somebody who enjoys those conversations that other people don't tend to enjoy very much, the ones about bodily fluids, that I hope you're feeling great on your 50th birthday, and we'll have that bodily fluids conversation tomorrow, and you can tell me all about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. Actually, that gives me an idea for a new radio show. You could call it Mind Over Bladders. Yeah. And also, just give a little perspective on the story that Maria started out with, the influence that Geov has had on journalism today. 600 words, that's about the length of a typical lead for me. So
You need to go to the job.
yeah, we've all learned.
And Goldie is firmly committed to the who, what, where, when, why School of Journalism. He tries to work at least one of those in the first 3 paragraphs.
That's right. It's more of the O. Henry School of Journalism, where you don't figure out what I'm talking about until about 2/3 of the way through. You know, I like there to be a good surprise in reporting. And should we make one more pitch for money here? Again, and I want to put this in perspective in terms of what it costs to do journalism. I was talking before about the $400 billion a year it costs to keep Geov alive. Another comparison here, that is just about enough money to keep the Seattle Times going through one more Blethen generation. So journalism is expensive, and your contributions to ETS would be appreciated. Our final speaker is Mike McCormick, host of KEXP's Mind Over Matters. Not the pun. And I know we've gone over a little later than we had expected, but I assume none of you mind. I certainly don't. Everybody's been very entertaining. So Mike, take your time.
I was trying to remember exactly when I had first met Geov, and I think it actually, to the best of my recollection, it actually happened in this building, and it's kind of sad that we're going to be losing. I'm not sure what the timeline is. We're going to be losing this building here pretty soon, because there's a lot of history behind it, a lot of activism. I've taped a lot of talks here, but and it's been a central hub for a lot of different groups here locally, and I met Geov. I was, at the time, an activist working on the Latin American Task Force of the Church Council of Greater Seattle. And it was around, I think, 1990, 1991-ish. We were working on the issue of Haiti had come up in the news. Things were deteriorating there. Aristide was up for election. And so we had a group up in the meeting room up there, sitting around a table, and there was several people who I'd never met before. I had heard of them, and I kind of began to realize that one of them was Geov Parrish, and I was, but he didn't look like somebody that was actually supposed to be at this meeting to me. I was looking at him, and because you got to understand, there's like a lot of, they're really scheduling things tight around here, and so there's a lot of different groups coming in after one group is just finishing their meeting and stuff. So I'm looking at him. He's sitting down with us, and I'm looking at him. I'm thinking, dude, you're at the wrong meeting, you know. And so we get going into our meeting, and he's still sitting there, and I'm thinking, well, it's not even like there's food here for him, you know. What's he doing here? And eventually it dawned on me that I guess he was supposed to be there. And the next time I ran into him was when he was suggested, Sally Soriano, another local activist is she here? Oh, great. Yeah. Well, you can credit Sally Soriano being the genius, the manipulator, the person pulling the strings behind the idea of the whole radio version of Eat the State, Eat the Airwaves. She was the one that had just suggested to me, saying that, Mike, you should really interview this guy, Geov Parrish. He's come out with this new publication, and it's really cutting edge, and have him on. I think at the beginning she just had thought about having him come in a single time, but pushed for having him come back regularly, and we just dove in and did it. And back in those days, we were doing things at we were in the communications building at University of Washington. It was just this cubby hole of a radio station. It was right after. It was right after I think they booted the news.
It was right after Curse, yeah. Yeah, and Geov that's also where I'd seen Geov. He'd been central in the Save the News at KCMU effort. So we were doing the show there early on. It was many a morning that was quite cold. They didn't have heat in the room there, and so pretty much three seasons out of the year it would be freezing in there. And Geov, I didn't tell you before, but I actually used to turn the heat down just when you come there. Geov with his health, It's not fair. You're insulated.
I am very, very well insulated. So those were the days, and there would also be times when back in those days we were a little more adventurous when Geov couldn't make it in. That was before Maria joined the show, and we needed to have a a show every week. Geov would do it from the road sometimes. He'd be out in the middle of friggin' nowhere in a phone booth on a highway, and we'd be doing what I call a phoner. And you'd literally be hearing these trucks going by, and sometimes, I mean, I'd swear you think he was about to get hit by like a 1620 Wheeler. You know, he'd say, just wait a minute, I'll be right back, and truck rolling by. So jump forward to, I'm not sure how long ago it was. I'm thinking 6, 7 years ago, where it was after his initial stroke or strokes, and I'd gotten a call on a Friday from Gavin saying that, yeah, Mike, I just wanted to let you know I'm calling from the hospital, that Geov's in the hospital. He's not going to be able to make it in for tomorrow's show, and you were the first person he thought of to call. And I was, you know, like both worried and like, you know, extremely touched, and said, "That's okay, we'll handle it." And I was thinking about it.
Because I knew you wouldn't go buy beer.
And I was thinking about it, how, you know, she probably then was calling other people that day, and how touched each of them were to hear that they were the first person that should call as well. So, but, so I can tell you a couple stories about what has actually happened at the radio station. You might find that of interest. One of the things, which is actually fairly recent, was happened. It wasn't this last fund drive. It was a couple fund drives ago, and Maria will remember this as well. It was probably about a year ago. We regularly, for fund drives, we get food brought in, and one of the things that we all drool over is when they bring the. I should know better about microphones. Is when they bring donuts in, and trust me, you think a well-funded radio station, there'd regularly be food or crumpets or something, but there isn't. So we have a nice spread for this one particular weekend, 3 times a year, and Geov had grabbed a glazed, what was it, some type of iced donut. You can't remember. It doesn't really matter. All I know is that he grabbed it. It didn't worry me. I mean, geez, I'm down in 2 or 3 of them. But Maria seemed somewhat concerned. So we're doing the radio show. Everything's going good. He's had his Pepsi. We had to do placement ads for. And down in this donut. And the radio show's going great. And we're done with the show. And as Maria says, they like to have fluid talk afterwards. So I'm going out to put some stuff away, and I look down the hallway, and I can see there's some commotion going on in the broadcast booth. I can't see what's physically going on in there because I'm just seeing people outside the door. And so I'm coming back and going, you know, what's the matter? And Maria's saying, well, Geov had just collapsed, and he had literally gone out completely cold and, you know, fallen on the floor.
And the microphone was off. There was no further reason to live.
You caught him?
He passed out, and I caught him.
And so, you know, I'm coming back, and I'm you know, very concerned because, I mean, there's like a lot of valuable furniture in there. And so, you know, we were, and so he could, you know, barely walk. Maria was helping him out. We were like walking robot man out, and trying to get him so he had enough energy to he could drive home.
We were trying to clear the booth for the next.
Yeah, the next guys are like, it's positive vibes with your host Kid Hops and Geov Parrish. So yeah, so we're just trying to get him out, and so eventually he got his sea legs underneath him about a half hour later, I think. Anyway, the amusing thing to me was the following week he came back, and I don't know why it was, but somewhere on the carpeting in the studio, they had done with tape. They had done like a body outline, like you see it like crime scenes. And Geov came in and you know, I was pointing to it and I was saying, yeah, that's where you went out last week. Which I was never sure if he really knew I was joking or not. Yeah, actually, well, it was in a completely different part of the building. So unless he had collapsed again later, then, which is entirely possible.
We didn't tell you. You were too distraught.
So the other amusing story, which was a little bit, probably about 6 months back. Actually, probably wasn't even that far back. It doesn't matter. Anyway, Geov would come in. Normally, Maria and Geov get there 8-ish, just after 8. And Maria got in there just shortly after 8. And Geov got in there, I don't know, it was like 8:10, 8:15. It was the point where you start to, you're not like worried where you're getting stressed, but you're starting to like, keep an eye on the parking lot a little more than you would otherwise. And he comes whipping in there, and he's talking about, he's got his notes. He can't read his notes because he left his glasses. At least that's what he said. And he's got something really important that he had intended to bring along, but he'd left it at home. So we're saying, no, it's cool, you don't need it. And Maria's getting stressed. I'm getting stressed, but not as much as Maria, because she'll have to cover if he can't talk. And damn if at like 8:15 or later, he suddenly goes, I'm going home, I'm gonna go get it. Okay, so we gotta be live at 8:30. He's just zipping out, and he says it without like even like.
Back to Fremont from Lower Queen Anne.
Yeah, so he's like jetting out before either of us could even react to it. And I'm thinking, there's no way he can make it back in time. I mean, maybe 8:45-ish, And sure enough, if he doesn't actually make it back there at about 8:31, I mean, we were just starting, So you can see it, and we got like monitors out in the parking lot, video camera monitors. So and you could see him, flying and driving in the car, Orange cone stuck underneath the front, pulling it as he normally does. And he made it. And that was just a few months ago. That was a
shock.
Anyway, so we and swear to God, we were checking the news that day to see if anybody had gotten hit on Aurora. So then the final thing anecdote I will leave you with is an indicator that we use every week we kind of, Geov has stated publicly that he is not a morning person. And if you ever are in the studios with him in the morning, you can visually see that. And we actually he'll come in various, with his hair in various shapes. And we've learned over time that that's actually hair going like straight up and out, like in antennas or ears or whatever. It's actually a good indicator the wilder his hair is, the better he is on a given day. And I'm not making that up. That's actually totally true. The days he comes in and he's got it like greased down, he's just gonna flop, And there's literally been times when he has had it like up and then like starts putting it down, and it's just like shutting him down or something. Maybe it is an antenna.
Then I have to lean over and like mess it up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much. I was trying to think of funnier stories, but I'm sorry. I'll think of them after I sit down. But we've been doing the show for almost as long as Eat the State has been out.
We started the same week.
Yeah.
Exactly as long. Wow. Yeah.
So and it's always it was a good suggestion, Sally. And I'm looking forward to doing it another 10 or more years, until the station kicks us out of there, or until people turn against us with these new fund drives we have to do regularly. So thank you, Geov, for everything you've been doing for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. But before we close, I'm going to hand it over actually to Geov, who you've used up most of your talking time tonight already, haven't you?
I had no idea I'd have a live mic through this. That
was a bad idea.
Made me feel a lot better.
You stole most of my punchlines. Anyway, so Geov has a few words in his own defense.
Actually, there are no words in my own defense. I'm pretty much guilty as charged with all of it. But an event like this is very, very humbling. I mean, quite aside from the fact that it's a bloody miracle that I made it to 50 years of age, and I'm kind of astonished about it. Something like this, I mean, I don't know whether it's a good idea or not. I'm still not really sure one way or the other, but it is not humiliating, but it's very humbling. It's very humbling that all of you came out to support the paper, and many of you in the room that I know do marvelous work in your own right, and you deserve every bit as much of an honor as I do. I wanted to particularly give props to a few of the people in the room, starting with the folks who helped make this happen. There were 4 women in particular who did the brunt of the organizing work. One of them had to leave early. In fact, I don't know, was she here or not, Vanessa? Okay, she was here. I didn't get a chance to see her. But Peggy Holtz, who's sitting over here in front. And Gabrielle Laval is around here somewhere. And somebody else I haven't seen tonight, but I'm sure she's here. Gail Draper, is she around? Yeah. Gail? Awesome. And I wanted to point out, I don't know if he's still here or not. He was here earlier, but Ray McGovern, who's been in town speaking, is also here tonight. And, oh, awesome. But was very honored with his, very honored with his presence tonight. And several other people who are just close and dear friends, and you know who you are, but I won't embarrass you in front of the crowd. But there's one in particular that I have to point out because without her, I would not be alive, and I would not be able to do most of what it is that I do, and that is my my best friend and lover and wife and all those other good things. Gavin, you want to? She's the bashful one in the family. And other than that, we have, I think, plenty of dessert over there still and some other food that people brought in. And please enjoy yourselves. We're supposed to be out of the building at 9:30, and we're all fully aware that that's simply not going to happen. But enjoy yourselves, and thank you all so much for coming. And if you have any ability to donate to any of the good causes that are represented here tonight, please do so. And please keep doing all the good work that you do. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, John, for living to 50 to make this possible. And there is birthday cake over there. So you all have to stay, eat some birthday cake, and mill around. Thank you all. And we sang at the start.
We sang at the beginning.
Yeah, you don't. Yes, we did. You already were, and also thank my fellow speakers.
Thanks to all of you.
It was a very entertaining evening. And I'll be happy to do this again at your next 50th birthday.
And there's wine up here, too.
That's right, there's some wine.